I was the most loyal and obedient girl by Ethan Foster's side, the crown prince of the Foster family. No matter how badly he hurt me, I never once thought about leaving. Not until the very last time, when he was willing to spend a fortune on his own Cinderella, yet was so stingy that he wouldn't lend me $50,000 to save a life. Heartbroken and exhausted, I threw the ring away and walked off. His friends told him he should coax me into coming back, but Ethan just laughed carelessly. What's the rush? She'll come back on her own before the day's over. On the third day, he finally lost patience and called me. If you're done playing around, come home. But when his call connected, the voice that answered belonged to a man he knew all too well. Keep your voice down. She was exhausted last night, and she's still sleeping. Don't make noise and wake her. I stood behind the noisy crowd, absent-mindedly watching the scene in front of me. Ethan Foster was holding a petite, shy girl, Kayla Hope, a sophomore in college, from an even simpler background than mine. She was also the girl he had been especially fond of recently. Inside the large VIP room, crowded with managers and PR staff from luxury brands, everything from clothing and shoes to handbags and jewelry, priced from hundreds of thousands to tens of millions, was being showcased by models of different skin tones. Whenever Kayla so much as glanced at something, Ethan would immediately spend tens of thousands to buy it for her. Yet just 30 minutes earlier, no matter how desperately I had begged, Ethan still refused to lend me $50,000. He knew exactly how broke I was, that I had even resorted to loan sharks, and he still didn't show me the slightest bit of mercy. In that moment, I suddenly understood everything. Deep down, I had always known I was nothing but a joke. Even though everyone said I was Ethan's longest-standing girlfriend, that he treated me differently from all his other women, it was only gossip, nothing more. Mr. Foster, that's enough. You've already bought too much, someone said. Kayla's eyes glimmered with innocence and joy. Ethan leaned down and kissed her cheek. As long as you like it, as long as you're happy. Mr. Foster, you're too good to me, Kayla said, gazing up at him with admiration and infatuation. That look clearly pleased the heir of the Foster family. Smiling in satisfaction, he wrapped an arm around her and stood up. Come on, let's go somewhere else and keep playing. Seeing them about to leave, I finally couldn't hold it in any longer. Ethan, I called out. He held Kayla close as she looked at me curiously. Mr. Foster, who is she? My chest felt hollow, but I clung to the last fragile bit of hope. Ethan flicked ash from his cigarette and looked down at me arrogantly. Then he pinched Kayla's soft cheek. She's just trash I haven't bothered to get rid of yet. Filthy, stubborn, and annoying. Don't pay attention to her. Kayla's eyes widened slightly before she pressed her lips together and looked at me. In her gaze, I saw a hint of contempt mixed with pity. I shifted my eyes away from her and looked at Ethan. I had met him when I was 12, fallen in love with him at 17, and now I was 22, 10 full years. I once thought I would love him forever. But now cutting him off felt almost effortless. Lowering my gaze, I looked at the ring that never truly belonged on my finger. After a moment, I took it off. Ethan frowned. Emily, he called my name. The ring traced a small arc through the air and landed in the trash. I exhaled softly, lifted my head, and smiled at him. Ethan Foster, from now on, I won't cling to you anymore, just like you wanted. Let's break up. The VIP room instantly fell silent. Just as I opened the door to leave, I heard the heavy crash of something being kicked over behind me. Emily, you know my temper. You'd better think carefully, Ethan said, his voice thick with anger. In the past, I would have been so terrified that I wouldn't dare say a word. I would have obediently backed down. But now, I didn't even bother to look back. Yes, I've thought it through, I said. Then I opened the door and walked straight out of the VIP room. The summer downpour arrived just as it had been waiting for its cue. Lightning ripped through the black sky. Thunder roared so loudly it felt like it could split my skull. Someone whispered behind me, reminding Ethan, "Do you want to check outside? It looks like the storm's about to hit." His expression slowly darkened with anger as he held Kayla in his arms. "Don't worry about her," someone said to him. Ethan lifted his glass with a cold laugh. "What's everyone so anxious about? Just wait, she won't even last a day before coming back." But the moment his words fell, heavy rain poured down outside the window. "It's coming down hard," Looks like she didn't bring an umbrella, someone murmured. Ethan glanced toward the window, his brows furrowing, his lips tightening into a hard line. Mr. Foster, you're hurting me. Kayla's shaky voice trembled in the air. Ethan let go, then pinched her cheek affectionately. Be good, let's keep drinking. Yet just seconds later, he suddenly widened his stance and kicked the coffee table, flipping it over with a violent crash. Kayla gasped in fear and shrank into a corner. Get out! Everyone out! Ethan barked. Kayla's eyes welled with tears, but she was still dragged outside. Ethan stepped up to the window. Rain was pouring like a waterfall, the sky and earth blending into one. Nothing outside could be seen clearly anymore. The moment I stepped out of the restaurant, the rain drenched me instantly, soaking me to my bones. I didn't hide or run for shelter. I just kept walking until my legs suddenly stopped on their own. Slowly, I crouched down and wrapped my arms around myself in the relentless downpour. I cried without making a sound. I didn't know how long I cried until the rain above my head suddenly stopped. Only then did I lift my face. And deeper than the stormy night sky was the gaze of the man standing before me. Nathan Steele was holding an umbrella by my side. When I looked at him, he leaned down slightly. His long fingers wrapped around my arm and pulled me up to my feet. Mr. Steele, I whispered in surprise. My thin dress was soaked completely, clinging to my body. His gaze didn't avoid me. Instead, it paused on me without restraint. I trembled a little and tried to pull my hand back, but right at that moment, my phone started vibrating violently in my pocket. I knew it was the hospital calling again, demanding the unpaid medical fees. Somehow, my wet fingers had already clutched onto Nathan Steele's sleeve. Mr. Steele, could you lend me $50,000? I lifted my face to look at him. Anger and despair filled every inch of my expression. It felt like I was betting everything I had left on this one request. Nathan held the umbrella over us, his eyes scanning my face slowly, but for a long moment, he didn't say anything. The heavy rain slammed fiercely against the umbrella, and the tiny world beneath it felt completely cut off from everything else. The air of the Steele family, unrestrained, unconventional, always unpredictable, but no one could deny his intelligence or his extraordinary capability. In this city, in the capital, he even overshadowed Ethan Foster. Everyone around us knew the truth. The two of them might look polite on the surface, but they never spoke to each other unless necessary. They clearly disliked one another. And I, who used to be Ethan Foster's girlfriend. Nathan probably despised me too. My fingers curled slightly as I prepared to let go. Just then, Nathan abruptly released my hand. But when his hand came down again, it wrapped around my waist, through my drenched clothes. Before I could even react, I found myself pulled directly into his arms. Emily, he said softly, what do you have to offer me in return? It was the first thing he said that night, bookmark, and it was also the very first time I had ever heard Nathan Steele call me by my real name, not anything else but Emily, not Miss Shen, but Emily. Nathan Steele helped me out of the bathtub, then handed me a steaming bowl of ginger soup. I was still a little dazed, from the moment he transferred that massive 7-figure sum to my account, to the moment I got into his car, arrived at his mountain resort villa, and now sat across from him wearing his bathrobe, drinking ginger soup. The entire process had taken barely 3 hours. I held the bowl in my hands, unable to look directly at the man in front of me. He was wearing a dark blue silk robe, the top slightly open, revealing his firm chest. While I drank, he leaned back in his chair and watched me, his bright, fox-like eyes gleaming. With his lazy posture and that unruly gaze, he looked exactly like the notorious libertine everyone in the capital claimed he was. After I finished the soup, I sat quietly, stiff and obedient like an elementary school kid. Nathan chuckled softly, and an instant later, he lifted me into his arms princess style. Why are you so light? Do you not eat? I eat, just a little. My entire body felt awkward and tense in his arms. Ethan Foster liked slender girls, and over the years I had barely touched rice. It had been a long time since I even remembered what it felt like to be full. Emily, you'd look even prettier if you gained a little weight, Nathan murmured as he set me down on his large bed. His tall frame leaned over me, and then he lowered his head and kissed me. His cool lips brushed against mine, and I shut my eyes, my ears instantly burning hot. His gaze was teasing, playful, as he brushed his fingers along the edge of my ear. Ethan never kissed you, did he? Why are you getting shy so easily? Ethan hardly ever kissed me, and on the rare occasions that he did, it was only on the forehead or cheek. He didn't like me. Of course, he didn't want to touch me. I squeezed my eyes shut, my ears and neck glowing red as Nathan loosened the tie of my bathrobe. I trembled and gently caught his fingers. "What is it?" he asked immediately, stopping his movements and holding my shaking hand. "Nathan, could you be gentle later? I'm scared." My fingers shook violently, the pink in my cheeks fading into a pale, cold color. I pressed my lips together, glanced at him, then turned away nervously. Nathan stroked my back softly. "Don't worry." His whisper tickled my ear, warm and reassuring, but his kiss deepened, becoming more heated. I didn't say anything else. I just shut my eyes, gritting my teeth as I endured until I couldn't anymore. I bit down on his shoulder, tears spilling uncontrollably. He suddenly froze as if something clicked. "Emily, is this your first time?" I didn't speak. I only nodded lightly. Nathan's movements slowed immediately. The hunger in his fox-like eyes softened into something tender. He cupped my face, gently wiping the tears from my lashes, and apologized with complete sincerity. "I'm sorry, Emily." He held me in his arms, kissing me softly, comforting me. "Does it hurt?" I nodded again. It really did hurt, so much more than I had ever imagined. "It's my fault," Nathan murmured, lifting my face between soft kisses, a pained sigh slipping from his lips. I didn't say anything else. I simply leaned my forehead against his chest as tears kept streaming down. When I was 20, there was one time Ethan got completely drunk. One of his friends called me to pick him up. When I arrived, he was slumped on a sofa, clothes messy, phone in hand as he kept swiping at the screen, locking and unlocking it over and over. The whole room reeked of alcohol and cigarette smoke. His eyes were red, and he was clearly very drunk, his mind hazy. "Emily, come here." He was rarely gentle, and it seemed like that was also the first time he ever called me by that name. I walked toward him, and he pulled me closer, taking out a ring from his jacket pocket. "Be my girlfriend." He didn't wait for my answer and simply slid the ring onto my finger. It was a little loose, didn't quite fit, and the design was plain and ordinary. But I was still overjoyed. On the way home, I kept turning my hand, admiring the ring over and over. Maybe because I was smiling too brightly, too happily, Ethan's mood suddenly improved as well. He wrapped his arm around me and kissed me for the first time. It was the 8th year since we had met. That night was the most beautiful spring night of my life. At the moment Ethan put that ring on my finger, I secretly swore that Emily Shen would belong to him for the rest of her life. Emily. Maybe my tears were falling too much. Nathan Steele looked both helpless and a little flustered. "Don't cry anymore, okay?" He wiped my tears, but they just wouldn't stop. "All right, we won't continue," he muttered, voice hoarse. He pressed his forehead gently to mine, rubbing softly. From what I knew, Nathan Steele wasn't a gentle man. Among the social circles of the capital, countless wealthy young ladies adored him. It seemed like he treated everyone kindly, but in reality, I had once witnessed how coldly he rejected those indifferent, emotionless, yet so composed that no one could blame him. He never seemed to slip up, never seemed to do wrong. Perhaps I was the foolish flower who shouldn't expect a spring breeze meant only for me. He was just the wind passing through the garden, blowing over every flower and lingering on none. Some girls had cried even harder than I was crying now, and Nathan didn't even spare them a glance. When he turned away, the only thing he left behind was, "Miss, your crying ruins your makeup. It's embarrassing." But now he was trying so hard to comfort me. I lifted my head from his arms in surprise. "Do I look embarrassing when I cry?" Nathan raised an eyebrow at that, then lowered his head and kissed the tear at the corner of my eye. "Emily, you're so beautiful it hurts." His flirtation sounded effortless, but somehow carried an irresistible charm. "Why?" I whispered. Nathan cupped my face, smiling softly but giving me no answer. "Be good. Let me take you to shower. The warm water will help." He bent down, ready to lift me again, but I shut my eyes, grabbed his arm, and pulled him back into my embrace. "Nathan Steele, I won't go back on my word. After tonight, we won't owe each other anything." He froze, completely still. No reaction at all. I opened my eyes in confusion, looking up at him. The gentleness that had filled his gaze earlier drained away, replaced by a coldness, like he had slipped back into the untamed, careless version of himself from before. "We won't owe each other anything?" He repeated my words, his voice low. I looked away, uncomfortable. "I'll return the extra money to you. I only need 50,000. Nathan let out a short laugh, as if amused against his will. I hesitated, then added in a trembling voice, If you're unhappy about it, then I'll save enough to pay you back." "Emily." Nathan grabbed my chin, stopping me mid-sentence. "If you keep talking, I might become the first man in the capital to die of anger because of a woman." I caught the faint bitterness of his cologne, an intoxicating scent that only made my thoughts blurrier. I could feel that he was angry, but even so, he remained gentle with me from beginning to end. And for a moment, I couldn't help drifting into a daze. He really wasn't like the kind of man I had assumed him to be. No wonder so many women preferred him over Ethan Foster. When I stepped out of the bathroom, Nathan had already brought a bottle of red wine into the room. "Have a drink with me, Emily." He sat down on the sofa. For some reason, I kept feeling that there was something strangely lonely and unreal in his eyes in that moment. I wasn't good at drinking, so I got tipsy rather quickly. Nathan Steele lifted me up, worried I might fall. I instinctively wrapped my arms around his neck. "Feels a little heavier," he joked softly. To be fair, these days I had been eating more comfortably, and there was even a thin layer of softness forming around my lower stomach, soft enough for someone to hold. Nathan laid me down on the bed and dimmed the bedroom lights. Outside, it began to rain again. After 3 days of being together, all the initial awkwardness had faded. The drizzle continued well past midnight before finally tapering off. I lay stretched across the pillow, my wavy hair spilling down, and Nathan leaned against the headboard, lowering his head to help me drink some water. He toyed with the ends of my hair, but he looked unsettled, as though something in him wasn't at peace. I didn't have the strength to speak anymore, and eventually I drifted to sleep against his chest. My phone vibrated non-stop, but I was sleeping too deeply to notice. Nathan picked it up with one hand. The number wasn't registered under Ethan Foster's name, but who else could it be? Nathan stared at the digits for a moment. The phone rang again, persistent, refusing to stop. He swiped to answer. "Emily, have you messed around enough? It's time to come home." Ethan's voice sounded impatient. Even when he lowered himself to speak, he carried that same arrogant tone, as if he were granting someone a favor by acknowledging them. Nathan's lips curved into a mocking smile. "Keep your voice down," he said lightly. He gently patted my back. I blinked groggily, then sank back into sleep. "Emily is exhausted. She's still sleeping. Mr. Foster, you should lower your voice. Don't wake her." The other end of the line immediately fell dead silent. Nathan waited patiently for Ethan to speak. About half a minute passed. "Nathan, why is Emily at your place?" "That," Nathan answered calmly, "is something you should ask yourself, Mr. Foster." "Nathan," Ethan's voice suddenly cracked. "Did you touch her? Nathan, goddammit, did you touch her?" He finally lost control, his voice hoarse and trembling. "Emily got caught in the rain. She wasn't feeling well," Nathan replied lazily. "Don't assume I'm some kind of animal." Then he hung up and powered off the phone. Those usually cold, unreadable eyes of his stared at me for a long moment. Then he let out a low, self-mocking laugh. He could have slapped Ethan Foster hard through that phone if he wanted to. But when he looked down at my peaceful, gentle sleeping face in his arms, something in him changed against his will. I had no idea any of this happened. The next day, I packed my things. Nathan drove me back to the city. When I stepped out of the car, I thanked him softly. He leaned back in the driver's seat, his shirt collar loose, his fox-like eyes curving with a lazy, seductive smile. "Emily, you're welcome to come find me anytime." My cheeks warmed as memories of those reckless, chaotic 3 days rushed back. "Goodbye, Mr. Steele." The smile in his eyes faded slightly as the car window slowly rolled up. He started the engine and drove away. I stood on the sidewalk, watching his car disappear into the distance. Deep down, I knew very clearly there would be nothing between us from now on. I went to the hospital to visit Miss Grace, and once again she had survived the critical stage. For now, she was safe. Seeing she was in good spirits finally allowed me to breathe a sigh of relief. When I was 12 years old, after my mother passed away, my father and paternal grandparents forced me to leave school. They disliked that I was a girl and felt schooling was a waste of money. They planned to send me out to work with my uncle and aunt, earn money for a few years, then marry me off with a decent dowry. It was Miss Grace and her mother who secretly gave me some money and found a relative to take me to the county's middle school. In the middle of the night, the principal and the teachers at my old school had protected me. They stood their ground and drove my father and grandfather away with uncompromising reasoning, allowing me to continue my education. In my second year of middle school, Ethan Foster accompanied Mrs. Foster on a cherry trip to that small town. I was the top student, and Mrs. Foster decided to sponsor me. That was also the first time I met Ethan. He was born handsome, almost dazzling, with a bit of arrogance, yet not the kind that made people dislike him. When Mrs. Foster took him back to the capital, he said one sentence to me, "See you in the capital, little one." Those words planted a seed inside me. From that moment on, I gave everything I had and never dared slack off, not even for a minute. At 17, I passed the entrance exam to one of the best universities in the capital. At 20, Ethan told me, "Emily, be my girlfriend." When I was 21, Miss Grace's mother fell gravely ill. The moment I heard the news, I cried and begged her to come to the capital for treatment. I spent all my scholarship money and everything I had saved from part-time jobs, but her illness was too severe. She passed away not long after. Even more heartbreaking was that shortly after the funeral, Miss Grace also fell sick, with the same illness her mother had. I had no money left. In the end, I bit down my pride and borrowed from loan sharks. It brought her back from death's door once, but then came the second time, the third, each more dangerous than the last. I had no choice but to go to Ethan and beg him. But he not only refused to lend me even a single dollar, he humiliated me. I nearly broke apart then. He didn't have the obligation to lend me money, but after knowing each other for so many years, at the very least he could have asked why I needed it so desperately. At the very least, he didn't have to shame me the way he did. But all I received from him was a mocking dismissal. "If you can't handle being humiliated, then get out. No one's stopping you." I still have a dream, one rooted in my poor, remote village. There are so many girls like me and Miss Grace who have no chance to study, who must work from a young age to support their families, and who are married off as soon as they grow older, all for a dowry that simply goes toward funding their brothers. They're bled dry piece by piece. Help Miss Grace, and I want to help more girls like us. But now I'm too weak. I'm trapped in my own struggles. After leaving the hospital, I decided to give up on my plans for graduate school and find a stable, high-paying job instead. On the way back, my phone suddenly chimed several times. When I opened it, I saw a mutual friend had sent me 10 consecutive transfer notifications. The endless string of zeros made it obvious. It was Ethan's money. But I felt nothing. Even if that night I had asked Ethan for $50,000, even if he hadn't refused and had generously handed me a large sum right away, I still don't think I would have had the heart to break up with him. But now, a summer jacket in winter or a straw fan in the freezing cold, help that arrives too late is useless. I didn't click on the notifications. A few minutes later, that friend called me. I hesitated, but finally picked up. "Emily." Ethan's voice was low and hoarse. In just 3 days, he sounded like a stranger from a different world. "What's wrong? Where are you? Come home." On the other end, he suddenly let out a quiet sigh of relief. "Then I'll wait for you at home." Without another word, he hung up. The house he called home was perhaps the only generous thing he had ever given me. After graduating from university, I moved into that apartment. I had been preparing for my graduate school exams. The apartment belonged to Ethan Foster, but some of the things inside were mine. And since we had already broken up, of course I had to come take my belongings and leave. When I opened the door, I froze for a moment. The air inside was awful, thick with the smell of cigarettes and alcohol. Ethan was sitting on the sofa, his shirt wrinkled, his hair a mess, as if he hadn't bothered to comb it for days. I changed into the house slippers and walked in. "Emily." Ethan stood up and came toward me, arms outstretched as if he wanted to hug me, but I stepped aside. "Ethan, we've already broken up. I'm only here today to get my things." I looked at him calmly. It seemed he hadn't slept much these past few days. There were dark shadows under his eyes, his face drawn and exhausted. He was even wearing the same shirt from 3 days ago. That shocked me. Ethan Foster had always been obsessively clean. "Emily, you're still angry." I shook my head. "I was just messing around with those girls, you know that." He reached out again as if to pull me back, but I avoided him once more. "Ethan, I don't care how you fool around with other people, but this time, I'm not joking with you." I looked at him. The boy I had once admired when I was young, the person I once imagined spending my whole life with. Now we were strangers. How could I not feel sadness? But after so many years, I had long known this would be the ending. And strangely, my heart felt calm. "So you don't need to explain anything to me." I walked past him and headed toward the bedroom. "Emily." I paused but didn't turn around. "You know nothing happened between you and Nathan. You're just doing this to make me mad, right? To get back at me?" Ethan walked up behind me, grabbing my shoulders. "Emily, no one understands your feelings for me more than I do." His confidence was absurd. Even when begging me to stay, he was still forceful, possessive. And yet, the more he behaved like this, the clearer my mind became. What could be more ridiculous than loving someone who knew exactly how much you loved them, but didn't care? Who didn't respect you, who freely hurt and humiliated you? I pushed his hands away. "This has nothing to do with Nathan Steele. Ethan, I'm the one who wants to break up." I turned to him and spoke seriously. "I don't love you anymore." That day, I packed my things and left. Ethan Foster never came to find me again. He was the crown prince of the Foster family, adored and indulged by everyone in the upper class of the capital. And I was just an orphan who once received charity from his mother. I began sending out resumes everywhere. With my degree, I quickly received interview invitations. On the day of the interview, as I stood outside the building, I saw Nathan Steele on the large LED screen. He wore a black business suit, standing beside several executives and assistants. He wasn't smiling. He looked serious and composed. In that moment, it felt like an entire lifetime had passed. The man who had spent 3 nights with me during the storm, in that secluded mountain villa, suddenly felt like a dream, a character from a story that wasn't mine. But I quickly pulled myself together. On the day we returned to the capital, Nathan and I had quietly closed the chapter between us. I needed the money to save a life, and perhaps he only entertained me because I had been the girlfriend of his mortal enemy. To him, maybe it was nothing more than a brief thrill. I rented a small new apartment, close to the company, old, cramped, but convenient. On the weekend, I used my free time to visit Miss Grace. She was recovering quite well this time. When I arrived, she burst into tears and told me, "My little sister is getting married." A girl barely 18, about to marry a butcher from the neighboring village. I held Miss Grace's hands tightly. "Have her run away and come here. We can help her find a job and take care of herself." Miss Grace only shook her head silently through her tears. We both knew how difficult it would be. Those endless mountain ranges were like chains locking their fates in place. How unbelievably lucky someone had to be to escape, like I once had. When I left the hospital, I received a call from the HR department of the company I had interviewed with. The woman on the line apologized and informed me that they ultimately would not be hiring me. I asked for the reason, and the moment she answered, I realized immediately it had to be Ethan Foster. Right after I hung up, a text came through. "Emily, I'll make sure you come back to me." I stood on the side of the street. Even though it was the middle of summer and the sun was blazing hot, my whole body felt cold. My fingers wouldn't stop trembling. I stared dazedly at the leaves above me and the streaks of sunlight slipping through. This was the same man I had loved for 5 years. When I first got accepted into a university in the capital and people mocked me for being poor and stupid, Ethan coldly stepped in to defend me. When I was sick, he stayed up all night at my bedside, clumsily cooking porridge for me. He had scolded me, humiliated me, yet also hugged me when he was drunk and begged for my forgiveness. Countless images, countless memories of him layered on top of one another, yet somehow they had all become blurry, unrecognizable. When we're young, we all fall in love with a perfect image of someone that exists only in our minds. The Ethan Foster I had loved all those years was just a version of him I kept polishing, a fantasy I forced myself to believe. I deleted every contact I had in his social circle. My job search kept failing, so I decided to follow a neighbor and sell small goods under the bridge. I needed income to survive, and I still had to worry about Miss Grace. She hadn't fully recovered, and what worried me even more was the loan shark debt hanging over me. My finances were becoming tighter by the day. Even paying the absurd interest was becoming difficult. Thankfully, selling things brought in some daily income. I pushed myself to save every possible coin, almost torturing myself with frugality, and within a week, I managed to save nearly 1,000 yuan. But the good days didn't last. In the second week, just as my neighbor and I set up our stalls, the city enforcement team arrived. The other vendors were experienced and scattered quickly, but my cart and my goods were seized. "Emily, are you okay?" my neighbor asked, panicked at my pale face. "I'm fine. You go ahead. I just need some quiet." I sat on a long bench by the river for a very long time. Eventually my phone rang again, an unknown number. I knew it was Ethan. I answered. "Emily, I'm at the hospital right now." I shot to my feet. "Ethan, your sister's name is Grace Zhang, isn't it?" My heart dropped. "What are you planning to do, Ethan? If you want something, then take it out on me. Leave her alone." I talked to the doctor. "Her illness can relapse at any time. It's dangerous." His voice carried that arrogant certainty of victory. "Emily, as long as you come back obediently, I'll immediately bring the best specialist in the capital to treat her. And if I don't come back? Emily, you know me better than anyone. Since we were children, anything I wanted, I always found a way to make it mine. But I'm a person with blood, flesh, thoughts, and dignity. Emily, what happened in the past was my fault. I'll change." I knew that for Ethan, saying such words was already him lowering himself. But I was no longer the Emily who could be coaxed back with a few soft lines. "It's too late, Ethan." "It's not too late. You know there's nothing between you and Nathan. Emily, let's patch things up. Let's forget the past. I won't bring it up again." "Nathan told you that?" I asked, surprised. I had thought that he and Ethan Foster were sworn enemies, so I assumed he would never pass up the chance to humiliate him. "That's right," I said quietly. "He tricked you, Ethan. That night, for 50,000, I sold myself to him." My voice was soft, so soft that by the end even a faint, almost mocking laugh slipped out. "So you see," I continued, "there's absolutely no possibility between us anymore." The other end of the line fell silent. I stared out at the shimmering river, the distant lights tearing open wounds I thought had already healed. "Emily, you're lying," Ethan finally said, his voice trembling. "The one you love is me. You would never do something like that." "Ethan," I replied, "there's nothing in this world that's truly impossible. I admit, years ago, I really did love you, but after those few days with Nathan Steele, I realized I had already let you go completely." "Emily," Ethan's voice cracked. "Let's end this peacefully," I said. "And don't ever use the people I care about to threaten me again. Don't make me hate you for the rest of my life." I hung up. Ethan called back immediately, but I blocked his number. That night, many of our mutual friends called me. "Emily, please, come see Ethan. He drank too much, so much his stomach started bleeding. He's in the hospital now and keeps calling your name." "Emily, whatever happened, just talk to him calmly, okay? These past few days, he hasn't been with any of those girls. He cut them all off, and the ring you threw away, Ethan found it. Emily, he refuses to get treatment. He's causing a scene, demanding to leave the hospital. We really don't know what to do anymore." I cut them off. "Call his father and mother. This isn't something small." "Emily, do you really not need him anymore?" "No," I said firmly. "I don't." I was about to hang up when my friend stopped me again. "Emily, we really didn't expect this. This time, Ethan truly regrets everything. Then his future girlfriend or wife will be very lucky," I replied calmly. I ended the call. That phone number had followed me for years. Maybe it was finally time to change it. After switching to a new number, I soon received a call from Nathan Steele. It had been nearly a month since we returned to the capital. Hearing his voice again made my mind drift. "Emily." Nathan clicked his tongue. "Shouldn't you visit me in the hospital?" "You're sick?" "Injured." "Injured? Did you get into a fight?" "To be precise," he said mildly, "someone came looking to fight me." "Ethan Foster?" I understood instantly, and couldn't help feeling guilty. Nathan had helped me hide what happened during those 3 days, but I had given Ethan the truth. A proud, entitled heir like Ethan Foster would never swallow his anger. I hurried to the hospital. At the entrance, I bit my lip and bought a cheap bouquet and a basic fruit basket, the most affordable ones I could find. Nathan really had been hurt. The corner of his eye was torn and bruised, but even wearing a striped hospital gown, even injured, he looked as nonchalant as ever. When he saw me enter, he frowned. The nurse and assistants tactfully slipped out of the room. I was a bit embarrassed, but I handed him the things I brought. "Mr. Steele, they're cheap, but it's from the heart. Please don't mind." Nathan looked at the simple bouquet and the slightly wilted fruit without even a trace of disdain. "Peel an apple for me?" After washing the fruit, I sat beside the bed and began peeling. But before I finished, the door suddenly burst open, kicked from the outside. I jumped, my hand trembling, the blade sliced into my fingertip. Nathan immediately sat up, grabbed my bleeding hand and lowered his head, and put the wound into his mouth. I instinctively tried to pull my hand back, but Nathan Steele only tightened his grip. Standing at the doorway was Ethan Foster, his clothes disheveled, a few bruises on his face, one arm bandaged. His eyes were red, and he looked completely wrecked. He had fallen apart in every sense of the word. "Emily." His voice cracked as he called my name. With some effort, he pulled a jewelry box from his pocket. "This is the pink heart-shaped diamond you always loved." His voice trembled. "Emily, I flew overseas myself to win it at auction. Come here and wear this ring. Tomorrow, let's register our marriage." I finally turned my head toward him. For a moment, the dark hollowness in his eyes lit up with hope. "Emily, come here, please." He held out his hand to me. "Ethan," I said calmly, "the pink diamond was something I loved when I was 20. I don't like diamonds anymore." He froze. "Emily, I'm sorry, I really didn't know. You never said." He looked lost, ashamed, confused. But what did it matter? My happiness, my sadness, my anger, he had never cared. Not once. "Go, Ethan, don't bother me again." Who would have thought that one day I would be the one saying those words to him? His expression darkened. "Is it because of Nathan Steele? What did he give you? Money? The jewelry in this hospital room?" His voice grew colder and more twisted. "Do you really think he likes you? Loves you? Emily, if you weren't my girlfriend, would he have even looked at you? A man like him never lacks women. Why would he be good to someone another man already got tired of?" I stood up and slapped him, hard. "Ethan Foster, don't make me regret ever loving you. Don't make me feel disgusted about my own feelings." "What did I say that was wrong?" he muttered, touching his cheek. His eyes were on me, but his words seemed directed at Nathan. "She's liked me since she was 17. Followed me since she was 18. It's been 5 years. I've changed countless women, and she never left. Nathan Steele, do you really think she likes you? She's only using you to spite me. You think she won't come back? Emily will return to me sooner or later, and you'll be the one she discards." His voice grew faster and faster, as if he was trying desperately to convince himself. He struck every one of my nerves, every wound, pressing until I couldn't bear a single word more. I turned away from him and walked toward Nathan. Nathan still looked relaxed, as if all of this were some mildly amusing show. "Emily," he drawled, "are you going to throw me away?" I didn't answer. Instead, I leaned down and kissed his slightly dry lips. I didn't know when Ethan had left, or how he reacted when he saw me kiss Nathan. But Nathan, he clearly enjoyed it. Even though my kiss was clumsy and inexperienced, he only seemed to want more. But after that impulsive kiss, embarrassment washed over me. "Sorry, I was kind of using you just now." "That's it?" he said lazily. "No responsibility?" "Responsibility?" I stared at him, startled. He looked right back at me, unrestrained, teasing, utterly shameless. "Of course, you took my first kiss. Shouldn't you take responsibility?" I stared at him, stunned. His first kiss? Was he joking like I was a 3-year-old? Everyone in the entire capital knew Nathan Steele was the biggest heartbreaker around. The line of women chasing after him could stretch from Beijing all the way to France. Even though Nathan was a year younger than Ethan, he was already 26. There was simply no way I could believe that had been his first kiss. But Nathan Steele, serious for once, looked at me with an expression I had never seen before. He wasn't smiling, and when he wasn't smiling, he was strangely compelling, almost irresistibly so. It was precisely those fox-like eyes of his, always filled with unspoken emotion, that made him seem nothing like a good man. My heart was in complete chaos. I didn't know what to say. In the end, I turned away and fled. Nathan called me, but I didn't answer. I had once thought that whatever existed between us had already ended, that we had settled everything. But now everything seemed tangled again, messy and impossible to untie. I stayed inside my tiny apartment for 2 days. During that time, Nathan called several times. I ignored every call. Then he sent me a series of texts and photos. "Emily, my face is ruined." In the photos, the wound on his face had become slightly infected, half of his cheek mildly swollen. He looked pitiful and aggrieved, nothing like his usual charming and carefree self. I replied to him, "Follow the doctor's instructions and take care of the wound properly." He answered almost immediately, "And if my face really ends up ruined?" A moment later he added, "If I lose my looks, my dignity is gone too. How will I ever find a wife?" For some reason that message made me laugh. I placed my phone on my chest and didn't reply again. These days I, Emily Shen, felt like I couldn't trust anyone. I couldn't believe someone would truly like me. I couldn't believe I could be lucky again, like the miracle of escaping my little mountain village 10 years ago. And Nathan Steele, of all people. I didn't believe I could ever be the girl he would stop for. Besides, the way we started was far from pure. Miss Foster called and invited me to dinner. She was the one who helped me when I was young, one of the kindest, warmest women I had ever met. When Ethan told her I had become his girlfriend, I had worried about what she would think. After all, I came from poverty. But instead, she had been overjoyed. "Emily," she told me, "I've always worried about Ethan. He's childish, impulsive, stubborn, never listens. You're such a good girl, kind, gentle, hard-working. I can rest easy, leaving him in your hands." But in the end, we still parted ways. And no matter how much Ethan and I had fought, I would forever be grateful to Miss Foster. When I entered the private dining room, I stopped in my tracks. Ethan was sitting beside Miss Foster. I hesitated, but Miss Foster stood up immediately, took my hand affectionately, and guided me in. "Emily, come in, sweetheart," she said kindly. I had no choice but to sit beside them. Miss Foster looked delighted as she pulled me down next to Ethan. "Emily, Ethan says you two are preparing to get married. Such wonderful news, why didn't you tell me sooner?" She smiled brightly as she slipped off the jade bracelet from her wrist, intending to put it on mine. I quickly raised my hand to stop her. "Auntie, you misunderstood." Before I could finish, Ethan spoke up. "Auntie, we had a misunderstanding. She's angry at me." Miss Foster immediately glared at him. "Of course you did something wrong. Emily is a girl I've watched grow up. She's good, gentle, sensible. You must have upset her, and now you know you were wrong." She squeezed my hand sympathetically. "But Emily won't forgive you?" Ethan's eyes reddened again as he looked at me pitifully. "Emily, I really know I was wrong. Won't you give me another chance?" Miss Foster hurried to persuade me as well. "Emily, go home with him. I promise I'll teach Ethan properly. If he ever dares to, if he bullies you again, just tell me," Miss Foster said. "I won't let him get away with it. This time, for my sake, forgive him once more, all right?" I gently pulled my hand back. Through all these years I had felt, truly felt, that she sincerely cared about me. She genuinely loved me and wanted me to become her daughter-in-law. It wasn't an act, but unfortunately I still had to disappoint her. "Auntie, Ethan and I already broke up. Emily, we won't be getting back together," I said softly. "I'm really sorry." Miss Foster's eyes instantly reddened. "Emily, what happened? Why are you two children fighting to this point?" I didn't answer. Everything had changed, and somehow, this felt like the natural order of things. Maybe my only mistake was being naive enough to believe Ethan Foster ever liked me back, even for a moment. But it wasn't until we broke up that I finally understood the truth. That ill-fitting ring, all those years ago, had already been a warning. Ethan asking me to be his girlfriend. Maybe he was angry at someone else. Maybe he was just bored. Maybe it was nothing more than amusement. The true owner of that ring had never been me. I'd simply lied to myself, forcing belief where there wasn't any. Seeing Miss Foster so heartbroken made me feel even more uncomfortable. "Auntie, I can't stay for dinner. I'll invite you next time, I promise." I excused myself. Both she and Ethan walked me to the door. "No need, Auntie," I said, politely refusing her offer to walk me farther. I grabbed my bag and left. As I stepped out, I heard Miss Foster scolding Ethan in frustration, but none of that had anything to do with me anymore. I was almost at the elevator when Nathan Steele suddenly appeared out of nowhere. His wounds hadn't fully healed yet, and he wore a cap. Today, he was dressed simply in a t-shirt and joggers, like a college student fresh out of school. But his smile still had that sly, dangerous charm. He grabbed my wrist and pulled me into a nearby private room right next to the elevator. At that exact moment, Ethan hurried out of the dining hall and rushed toward the elevators. "Emily." He shouted my name, loud and desperate. Just as Ethan was about to reach the door, Nathan locked it with a crisp, decisive click. The room was dark. When Nathan bent toward me, the brim of his cap brushed the top of my head. "Emily," he murmured, "if Ethan can't find you today, will you leave with me?" "How's your wound?" I asked, dodging the question entirely. Nathan took off his cap and leaned closer so I could see clearly. "Almost disfigured, but it looks fine now." I gently touched the hardened scab along the side of his face. "Emily, that tickles." His voice lowered beside my ear. "The doctor said I can't scratch it. It's so itchy I can't sleep." He gave me a sidelong glance, pitiful, almost childlike. "I've never been hit like this before," he muttered. "When a wound heals, it always gets very itchy," I whispered. "You have to endure it, or you'll tear it open and leave a scar. Then, will you scratch it for me instead?" Before I could respond, footsteps echoed in the hallway. Then Ethan's voice again. "Emily, don't hide from me. I know you haven't left, you're still here." He began knocking on each door one by one. A server tried to calm him, reminding him that guests were dining, but I knew Ethan's temperament too well. No one could stop him. He would soon reach this door. My whole body tensed. Nathan pressed closer, lowering his voice. "Emily, kiss me." I looked at the fierce healing scar at the corner of his eye, and in the end, I couldn't bring myself to refuse. I rose on my toes and gently kissed the edge of Nathan's wound, but he took the opportunity to wrap an arm around my waist and lift me onto the table beside us. As he bent down to kiss me, Ethan was pounding furiously on the door outside. "Emily. Emily." My entire body went stiff. I tried to push Nathan away, but he only kissed me harder, deeper. "Emily, he can't get in," Nathan murmured against my lips. That day was utter chaos. Ethan had knocked open nearly every door on that floor, but this one, this very room where Nathan and I were, he still couldn't break into. When he finally went mad enough to try kicking the door down, Miss Foster had ordered people to drag him away. Meanwhile, I was trapped in Nathan's arms, losing myself in the heat of it all. Ethan's voice outside had grown hoarse, wild. Maybe he heard something from inside, maybe he heard me. Because in the height of that dizzying moment, I couldn't hold back a soft cry. And the moment that sound left my lips, Ethan's voice abruptly stopped. A second later, the kicking grew louder, harder, violent. My whole body tensed in fear. Nathan completely lost control. "Emily," he murmured between kisses, "Emily." When everything quieted down outside, Nathan knelt on the floor, gently smoothing every wrinkle on my dress with a seriousness that made my heart twist. I gradually calmed down. But the more I thought about everything, the more annoyed I felt. No matter what Nathan said, I refused to answer. Finally, when we were about to leave, he leaned against the door and held onto my wrist. "Emily, when I'm serious," he said quietly, "I'm nothing like the rumors say. I'm not the playboy they make me out to be." For a moment, I almost believed he really liked me. "Let's be together," he said. But in the end, I still couldn't agree. Just like Ethan had once said, why would someone like Nathan Steele like me? If I hadn't been Ethan's ex-girlfriend, would he have stepped out of his car that rainy night, swallowed his pride, and held an umbrella over me? I wasn't trying to think the worst of others. It was simply that life had taught me too many harsh lessons. I had to remind myself not to repeat old mistakes. Men from these elite circles were not people who belonged in my world. During the drive back, Nathan and I didn't say a single word. When the car finally stopped, I stepped out. "Emily," Nathan called after me. I didn't turn back. I didn't answer. I kept walking deeper into the narrow alley. His car headlights remained on, illuminating the entrance long after I disappeared. Later, someone told me that night, in that rundown rental district where cars weren't supposed to enter, a luxury vehicle worth millions had been parked there the entire night without leaving. Meanwhile, Miss Grace's condition started showing signs of improvement. The next time I visited, she cried until her eyes were red and swollen. She told me her younger sister, only 18, had refused the marriage and run away, but her family caught her and dragged her back. Her grandfather had beaten her so badly, her leg was nearly broken. Miss Grace clutched my hand, sobbing uncontrollably. She said her uncle rushed there in the middle of the night after hearing the news, and finally got her sister into a hospital in town. Emily, she said she wanted to die. As I listened to Miss Grace's trembling voice, a chilling thought entered my mind. If years ago, Miss Grace and her mother hadn't secretly sent money and arranged for someone to smuggle me out in the middle of the night to attend school, then what waited for me might have been the same tragedy. Miss Grace, I whispered, I'll find a way. I'll get your sister out of there. Dying solves nothing, but if she lives, there's hope. But Emily, do you really have a way? She asked shakily. You barely escaped that place yourself. We have to try, I said. We have to. I borrowed 100,000 yuan at an interest rate even higher than before, then returned to my hometown. I purposely wore the most expensive clothes I owned. I rented a luxury car. When I arrived in the village, I sought out the girl's father and grandfather. I handed them 30,000 yuan. Let Quinn come to Beijing with me, I said. I guarantee that if she works with me for 1 year, she'll earn at least 200,000 yuan, and she'll only be 19 next year. It won't affect her marriage prospects. 30,000 yuan up front, nearly her father's entire yearly income, was enough to hook them immediately. 30,000 is my advance payment, I continued. Next year, Quinn will bring back the remaining 170,000. How about it? I'm short on people right now. We need to leave tomorrow. You're saying she can make 200,000 yuan in a year? Her grandfather asked suspiciously. If she doesn't, I'll make up the difference myself. I spoke with deliberate arrogance. Opportunities like this don't come to everyone. If it weren't because of Miss Grace, Quinn wouldn't even have a chance. Fine, her grandfather grunted. Let that girl follow you for a year. Everything went smoother than I had expected. The next day, when I arrived at the small town hospital to pick up Quinn, something unexpected happened. My biological father, who had been working far away, somehow heard that I had returned. He hired a car and rushed back to the village overnight, and just as I was leading Quinn out of the hospital, he and several relatives blocked our path. Come back, he ordered coldly. I already took the bride price. My father looked at me like a starving wolf eyeing fresh prey. Emily, he growled, you're my daughter. You listen to me. You're coming with me to marry that man. I didn't want to say a word to him. I took out my phone to call the police, but he was faster. He slapped it out of my hand. Let me tell you something, he sneered. Calling the police is useless. A father marrying off his daughter? They won't interfere. His eyes glinted with greed. After all these years of raising you, you're finally useful. Time to make me some money. He grabbed my arm and shoved me toward a truck. Don't even think about running. I took the money, I can't return it. How much did you take? I'll give you double, I said, trying to steady the situation. He snorted, slapped me across the face, and snarled, Don't play tricks with me. I've lived longer than you've eaten rice. When I resisted climbing in, he slapped me again. My grandfather and uncle rushed over as well. Quinn cried helplessly at the side, begging them to stop, but everyone around us only watched indifferently. That place was still the same. Girls' lives meant nothing. A daughter's value was measured by how much bride price she could bring in. They pushed me into the truck. Just as the door was closing, a deafening screech of brakes pierced the air. Nathan Steele's black Hummer blocked the truck head-on. Before anyone could react, he kicked my father aside and pulled me out. Nathan. My legs weakened so badly I almost collapsed. Don't be scared. You're okay now. He wrapped me tightly in his arms. I'm here, Emily. He lifted my face, his fingertips brushing over the handprints left on my cheek. His expression grew dark and serious. Get in the car, he said softly. Wait for me. He pushed me inside and locked the door. Realizing what might happen, I panicked. I pressed against the window, pounding on it. Nathan. Nathan. He turned his head toward me just once. The scar at the corner of his eye was still there. His smile, still wicked and infuriating, made my tears fall instantly. In that backward, cruel village, most people were ignorant. They knew nothing about laws or boundaries. Those who had a bit more sense could see from Nathan's car and demeanor that he was wealthy and not someone to provoke. But my relatives had already lost all conscience. They didn't care about consequences. The only thing in their minds was, Nathan Steele had ruined their business deal. And they weren't about to let that go. Cutting off their source of income was no different from taking their lives, and in that moment, a whole group of them rushed forward to beat Nathan. At first, he held the upper hand, but as more and more of them surrounded him, he couldn't fight back anymore. Someone split his forehead open. Blood streaked down his face. Another man smashed a wooden stick into his leg. Nathan clenched his jaw so hard his temples twitched, cold sweat beading across his forehead, yet he refused to make a sound. I pounded frantically on the car window, screaming his name through tears. Nathan, unable to fight back, was eventually knocked to the ground, beaten until he lay motionless in the dirt. Fortunately, his assistant and the police from the city arrived just in time. Nathan was lifted into a vehicle and rushed to the nearest county hospital. I stood outside the operating room as tears streamed uncontrollably down my face. The last look he gave me, weak but still smiling, burned itself into my memory forever. In that moment, I didn't think of anything else. I just begged for him to be safe. I just prayed he would wake up. That night, I was finally allowed in to see him. The doctor said Nathan had a strong constitution, so even though his injuries looked terrifying, they weren't life-threatening. But when I saw the thick bandages wrapped around his head, already soaked nearly through with blood, I broke down all over again. Nathan lay there, looking fragile. "Emily," he tried to lift his hand toward me. Afraid he'd pull on his IV, I rushed forward and took his hand myself. "Do I look terrible?" he whispered. My eyes filled instantly. I let out a shaky laugh, but the tears only fell harder. "Are you stupid?" I choked. "Why didn't you wait for the police? Why didn't you wait?" "I couldn't," he murmured. "If I came 1 second too late, you would have suffered more." His gaze shifted to my cheek, where the handprint was still glaring red. "Does it hurt?" "No, not anymore." I wiped my tears and glared at him. "You're the one who's hurt, Nathan Steele. You idiot." He let out a small sigh. "It's over, Emily." "What is?" "With this face, and my brain probably damaged. I'm doomed. I'm ugly now, an idiot, no dignity left. I'm gonna die single." "What are you talking about?" I sputtered, somehow both furious and amused. "You shaved your head because of surgery. When the wound heals and your hair grows back, you'll look the same as before." "But you called me an idiot. Twice," he said with exaggerated despair. "What if I really end up mentally damaged for life?" I stared at him for a long moment, tears blurring my vision again. Then I burst into a helpless laugh. "Well," I sniffed, "then I'll just have to accept my fate and marry you." When Nathan later brought me and Quinn back to Beijing, several other girls who had been sold or forced into marriages were rescued as well. Some of them went back to school, others began preparing to work and leave that place forever. Nathan even established a charity foundation named after me, dedicated to helping girls in my hometown who had lost the chance to study, as well as orphans abandoned by their families. I thanked him countless times from my heart, not just for myself, but for the millions of girls who might finally glimpse a ray of hope. After returning to Beijing, Nathan was forced by his family to rest and recover. I, on the other hand, became incredibly busy handling matters for the charity fund, until the loan sharks found my apartment, because I hadn't paid interest on time. That was the first time I had ever seen Nathan truly angry at me. He paid off everything on the spot. Only when those men finally left did he glance at me and say, "Emily Shen, come here." I followed him into the room, and before he could say another word, I blurted out an apology. I really didn't have a choice back then. I had just graduated, and I was preparing for my graduate exam. I said, "Quinn got seriously ill again, so I had no choice but to borrow money." The second time was because Ethan Foster kept blocking every job opportunity I had. I ended up selling things under the bridge, and the city inspectors confiscated everything. By the time I finished, I was crying so hard I could barely breathe. I sat in front of Nathan Steele like a little girl, crying, apologizing, admitting fault all at once. At first, Nathan really looked like he wanted to scold me harshly. After all, I had borrowed from loan sharks, twice, something he'd told me never to do. But as he watched me sobbing, his expression finally softened, and whatever he intended to say died in his throat. Instead, he placed all of his bank cards into my hands. "From now on, you have me," he said quietly. "There won't be a third time." Nathan wiped my tears, looking guilty for being too stern earlier. "Anyway, from now on, whatever happens, Emily Shen, think of me first." "But I want to rely on myself more," I whispered. Nathan lowered his eyes slightly. "I know. You're Emily Shen first. Only after that are you my girlfriend." Before I could speak, he added, "I just mean, when you can't handle something, don't force yourself. I'm here." Okay. Before we officially got engaged, there was one time during a gathering with friends when I happened to run into Ethan Foster again. Naturally, he'd already heard about my upcoming engagement to Nathan. There were many people around, so he politely offered his congratulations. I smiled just as politely and thanked him. Someone with too much free time snapped a photo of us, Ethan and me simply smiling at each other, and posted it online with the caption, "The Prince of Beijing and the Cinderella Girl, what a beautiful pair." Nathan must have seen it somewhere, because he became absurdly jealous. "Emily, do you all think I'm dead or what? Beautiful pair? Sweeter than our secret love?" That night, well past midnight, he got up, grabbed his phone, and posted on his social media, "Secret crush successful, lifelong happiness." Attached was a picture from when I was 18, still baby-faced and shy. Ethan was in that photo too, standing next to me, looking impatient as always. Nathan had blurred Ethan's face completely, and in the upper left corner of the picture stood a boy in a sports jacket, with bright eyes and a playful, charming smile. It was Nathan, his teenage self. He had circled himself in bright red. After that post, both of our phones blew up with notifications. I pulled him aside immediately. "You had a crush on me?" "Nathan Steele, did you secretly like me? Since when? You're way too good at hiding things. If you hadn't gotten jealous tonight, I would have never known, right?" Nathan rubbed his nose in embarrassment. "Yeah, I had a crush on you. Actually, not a secret one, a public crush." I blinked. "A public crush?" "I confessed to you directly," Nathan said, looking at me with an expression full of helpless affection. "But you got scared and ran from me." Slowly, my memories began to resurface, the ones I had buried deep. When I first entered college, I was painfully self-conscious, timid, and always quietly infatuated with Ethan Foster. I never paid attention to any other boys at all. No wonder I forgot everything else. Nathan sighed. "Later, your roommate told me you hated me." "Hated you?" I echoed. "She said," he mimicked mockingly, "you called me a smirking, shameless, flirty jerk who definitely isn't a good person and must be here to toy with me." My entire soul shriveled. God. I must have said it jokingly to my roommate, but Nathan, he remembered it all these years. "I'm so sorry, Nathan Steele," I whispered, wanting to crawl into a hole and die. I tugged lightly on Nathan's sleeve and whispered an apology. "Just an apology?" He raised a brow at me. I laughed softly, wrapped my arms around his neck, and hugged him tightly. "Then I'll take responsibility. I'll take responsibility for you for the rest of my life, okay?" Nathan lowered his head and kissed me gently. "Then from now on," he murmured, "don't smile at other men like that. I'll get jealous." "Okay," I whispered. "From now on, I'll only smile at you. Susu." "I love you." "I know." I lifted my face to return his kiss. "I love you too, Nathan Steele." In the second year after Nathan and I got married, I gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. That same year, Ethan Foster got into an accident abroad. His left arm was injured, and he had to stay in the hospital for a long time. Eventually, he married the nurse who took care of him and returned home to hold a wedding. A friend whispered to me that the bride looked somewhat like me. Mrs. Foster wasn't fond of the girl, but Ethan insisted on marrying her. I only smiled and held my baby girl tightly in my arms. That night, when Nathan got home from work, he seemed a little different from usual. Normally, the three of us slept together with our daughter. But that night, he asked the nanny to take her back to the nursery. We'd been together a year, married for 2, and slept together countless times, but never like this. He was strong, impatient, almost desperate, making me repeat over and over that I loved him. In the end, when I really couldn't take it anymore, I pinched him hard. Nathan pulled me tightly into his arms, looking at me as if he were the one who'd been wronged. What are you even doing? I asked breathlessly. Susu, he said hoarsely. You're mine. Of course you're mine. I hate when other people look at you. Only then did I understand. He must have been jealous again, jealous because Ethan had married a woman who resembled me. Someone they wanted but could never have, I teased. Shouldn't you feel triumphant? No, he grumbled immediately. Just thinking about that idiot makes me annoyed. He's like a damn sticker you can't peel off. It's irritating. This man, married for 2 years already and somehow getting even more childish. He left me completely unsure whether to cry or laugh. All I could do was patiently soothe him. The next day, Nathan suddenly suggested taking me and our daughter out to play. And of course, just as I expected, we ran into Ethan Foster and his new wife. Ethan introduced his wife to us. When I looked at her, she really did resemble me a bit. Nathan wrapped an arm around me and smiled warmly at her. This is my wife, Emily Shen. Then he lifted our daughter, almost pushing her into Ethan's line of sight. And this is our daughter. Isn't she pretty? Doesn't she look just like her mom? Nathan was overly generous, even letting Ethan hold our daughter for a moment. By the end, the smile on Ethan's face couldn't stay in place anymore. He and his wife left in a hurry. Only then did Nathan seem satisfied. Not long after, Ethan and his wife moved abroad. Nathan's jealousy finally quieted down, temporarily. 3 years passed, and Ethan Foster got divorced. Rumor had it his ex-wife left with a large sum of money. One late night, half asleep, I received a call from overseas. The voice on the other end said only one thing. Susu, I'm sorry. Later, a mutual friend invited me out for tea and told me that before Ethan married, he had once gotten drunk and confessed something all night long. When he learned that I had once secretly liked him, his first thought, his immediate reaction, was that I wanted to climb higher. That I liked him only for his money and status. So he humiliated me, made things difficult for me, was kind to everyone except me. But he had been harsh only to me. He wanted to see whether, without gaining any benefit from Ethan Foster, through me, I would give up and finally reveal my true colors. But no matter what he did, no matter how he treated me, I was still good to him. I never abandoned that ring he gave me back then. It wasn't originally meant for me, it was chosen for another girl, but she rejected him and told him, Ethan, I can't accept you when someone like Emily Shen is by your side. The truth is, the person you like is Emily, not me. Stop lying to yourself. He was furious because she'd hit the truth he didn't want to face. So he deliberately gave the ring to me and wanted me to become his girlfriend. His original plan was that once I accepted it, he would expose the truth in front of everyone and humiliate me. But back then, I smiled too happily, too joyfully. He softened, and that was how we started dating. He couldn't control the fact that he liked me, yet he also couldn't accept that he could love someone like me. So he humiliated me and constantly betrayed me with other women. But every time he got drunk, he would hold me and beg for forgiveness. Until the day I finally asked him to lend me money. And just like that, as if confirming his original suspicion, he believed he had finally uncovered my ugly truth. That I was with him only for money. He hated it. He refused without hesitation. And worse, he humiliated me even further. Maybe Ethan couldn't understand it then, but because of a mere 50,000. He lost forever that foolish girl who had once loved him with everything she had. By the time he slowly realized that I really needed help, he was completely thrown off balance, panicked, and kept making one mistake after another until finally there was no hope of undoing anything. My friend mentioned Ethan Foster's current situation again, but I smiled and cut him off. I'm sorry, I have to go. My husband and daughter are waiting to pick me up. Outside the window, Nathan Steele was carrying our daughter down from the car. The moment he saw me, he instantly smiled. That smile of his, mischievous and shameless, yet impossible not to love. Spring sunlight was warm and golden. I waved at them, stood up, and walked out. The snowflakes that once fell on me, fell into my heart when I was young, had finally melted into the gentle water of spring after I met Nathan Steele. After that, the long stretch of my life no longer had storms. Only warm sunlight,